Good morning, watchers. Welcome to Brother Sal's Sunday gathering at the storehouse. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy that you're still here listening. Where's here? Today, I'm in Palm Springs. I had to get out of Mexico in order to renew my passport, so a friend of mine was driving up to California, and he dropped me off here at Palm Springs, and I have the opportunity to stay with my good friend, Brother Ray, for few days. And those of you who are still listening that can remember when Ray and I used to do a weekly show called Balcony Challenge. Balcony Challenge was one that took a look at the perspective of how the rest of the world was reacting to the thing that we're watching, this on-the-ground realization of Daniel's prophecy through this little horn character, and how he, as the king of Jordan, has been growing into this position where, from Ray's perspective, he watches how the nations of the world have also formed a 10-king kingdom that is that these people that we're watching so closely turn out to be working for. And so it's with really great pleasure that I introduce to you this morning the resumption of our balcony show. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce you and welcome to the show my good friend Raymond. Hello, Ray.
How you doing, Sal?
Oh, well, you know how it is.
Did you have to skip out of Mexico? Did they run you out of there, or did you just leave on your own accord?
Well, I had to leave on my own accord, because if they run you out, then they can't get back in. And my visa was running out. And the cost of a round-trip airplane ticket was really out of the question, just to fly to L.A. or the closest place out of the country and turn around and come back. But my friend was driving up to Oregon, and he said, boy, I could sure use the company, somebody to talk to. So we had two 13-hour days, a 12-hour day and a 13-hour day. 12 hours from Sayulita up to Obregon, and then we stayed in the hotel there. And then the next morning, or the next day, we drove 13 hours to get to here.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure seeing you, and it was a pleasure seeing your friend, and it's good having you here, and it's good being back on the air, so to speak, with another new edition of Balcony Challenge.
Mm-hmm. I'm really excited about it. Now, the other day, when I first got here, our conversation immediately went into what we've been watching for so many years. And you presented me with this program, or this perspective, I should say, of what the world has turned into over the last couple of years, that we have not had the opportunity to do this because I don't get good internet down in Mexico. But I might add that the reason that we're able to do this show again, we're doing this one here from Palm Springs in your home, but when I get back to Mexico next week, I have access to Dr. Diego's house every day, any day that I want, and I can plug right into his modem, and by doing that, I get really good internet.
Oh, that's good.
And so we can now have a conversation and record it over Skype, and be able to carry the thoughts that we're starting to develop in this show back into a cohesive and comprehensive study, because we're getting closer and closer and closer to this time when this little horn is going to make his move.
Well, in our previous programs, we always did more or less your study, and then my interest in, more of a geopolitical macro kind of look or examination at the world and what's happening, what's going on financially. Remember our old programs, we were always on top of the bank problem before it was actually happening.
Oh, we talked about that constantly.
The end of when we saw the end of what was the when Clinton was doing his when he got rid of Glass-Steagall, we said then, something's up, something's wrong. And it doesn't mean that they were conspiring to destroy the economy or anything. It just said that that they were engaged in risky behavior, and we all saw it. And we used to have listeners who would write in and ask questions of similar concern, and we stayed on top of it, and I think we did a very good job.
I think we did also. That's why I've always been so anxious to restart the show, but with having to go to Mexico, I didn't have any idea that when I got to Mexico that the internet was going to be so bad. And the reason for it, folks, is simple. They have copper wires down there in their telephone lines, and they just simply can't keep up with this high-speed internet that we're using now. Fortunately, they have a program of bringing in fiber optic, but who knows when.
Well, they also are, they were well ahead of us years ago when I would go there. They were well ahead of us on cellular, so I'm surprised they don't have more of a Wi-Fi network completed, but they will someday, or who knows. You can't fight that. But
no, we can't. But like I say, finally I've come up with a friend who he has a beautiful medical clinic down there in Mexico, and he doesn't use his house during the day. So he said, boy, use my place. And I went over and gave it a try, and we had a couple of conversations, and it worked out well. So
that's good. That's great.
Yeah. So here we are. We're back into the business again of bringing these folks a perspective about what's going on in the world, and it kind of answers the why. Why are they doing it? Why put out all of this effort to bring about this destruction that Paul tells us is coming? And they're completely unaware of it, of course. They're trying to solve problems rather than create problems. But what they're doing, of course, is creating more and more problems that get bigger and bigger as time moves on.
Well, we did discuss the other night that when we were catching up that, financially, and with quantitative easing and all this other stuff that they've been doing, that pretty much they're either dealing with it thinking that they're fulfilling or participating or continuing to believe in it being simply a cyclical issue or cyclical problem, or, as some are suggesting, that it is a structural problem as well, and it could be a structural problem and beyond a cyclical fix. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But we'll just see. It continues to be. They press forward and they keep inflating the various markets through central banks all over the world. We were just discussing this Bank of Japan intervention on Friday, where they're going to print more money. So we are seeing a currency war unfold, so to speak. But is it like the wars of old, where they're not really connected to each other as they appear to be today? And I think that's the issue we have to keep our eyes on.
Well, the thing that really got my attention the other night when we were talking was the fact that it's getting more and more well defined that the people that we're watching, the King of Jordan and all of these players in the Middle East, are literally working for someone. And that someone is not identified as a one, but as a group of nations that are trying to bring the Middle East under control in the way they want it. And they have literally hired this little horn king, King Abdullah of Jordan, to play the part to get what he's looking for. And what he's looking for is the unfulfilled promise of the English from back at the time that they broke the Ottoman Empire in the First World War. They were promised an Arab state. And it's always been, because he publishes this on his site, they are waiting for England to bring back or to fulfill their promise of an Arab state.
Through Sykes-Picot.
Pardon me?
Through the Sykes-Picot agreement that some people, even Glenn Beck I noticed, was talking about it the other night, but he wasn't going very, I don't listen to Glenn Beck, but I did happen to see an interview he was doing with someone, I don't even know where it was, on some network, and he was admonishing or discussing Sykes-Picot and telling people to go and look at it and blah, blah, blah and all of that. But it's interesting how Sykes-Picot, we're back to that promise again.
Well, I think we should explain to the listeners, Sykes-Picot was a secret agreement.
Yeah, how to divide up, before the war, how to divide the Ottoman Empire before World War I began.
Right.
And it was between the English, the French, who were in the Levant as well, and the Russians. And it was only after, something that Beck did not discuss, but it was only after when the Bolsheviks took control of Russia and found it, because the Russians were the only ones that put it on paper. The British, supposedly, I don't know, it seems like almost kind of an urban legend, if you will, that they committed it to memory. But anyway, when the Bolsheviks supposedly took over Russia after deposing the Tsar and after World War I, they published Sykes-Picot and supposedly embarrassed the British and the French, who at that point decided not to go with Sykes-Picot.
No, they were going with the Balfour Declaration.
Well, the Balfour was just being discussed too, but for some reason they didn't want to fulfill Sykes-Picot. They have the war, and then they have another war, and then they decide to fulfill Balfour by going with establishing a state in Palestine for the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
But I found the interesting thing about Sykes-Picot was that the current Hashemite king, it wasn't his, it was his uncle.
Yeah.
And
Faisal the First.
Yeah, he was a nice guy.
Oh.
And his son was equally nice, and
yeah.
they were both killed unexpectedly, or not unexpectedly. They were killed. They were killed, and they don't know how and why and who did it. But
it was a mystery.
It was a mystery. They mysteriously. Thank you. They mysteriously died, and then this current king, his grandfather, I believe, or father, then takes control, and now we have we have what we have. We have Jordan is
well, the thing about it is that they enlisted Faisal's brother Abdullah
after he died.
Well,
the
first one died, yeah,
and his son died,
yes,
who was also nice and on board with this idea, and they were also very. They were considered pan-Arabists, and they could pull the Arabs together and they were perfectly willing to accept Israel as a state.
Yes.
But for some reason, the British and the French and everybody else in that who had something to say, but primarily those two, they didn't go with it. They didn't want to create that caliphate at that time. They double-crossed him.
Yeah, they gave him 28 days of meetings in Syria where they were going to...
And he went to London and was received and all of that. Yeah.
But then they told him after 28 days, we can't do this.
We don't want to.
Well, we have this other secret agreement, and they used that as the reason to...
You mean the Balfour?
No, they were putting Balfour together. They were working toward the Balfour Declaration being put together. They were going to bring the Israelis and start a state in what...
Yeah, Balfour was a position paper.
Yes.
And a thought. But Sykes-Picot was an agreement.
It was in a secret agreement.
Because the Russians were going to get, it was all about how to divide up the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottomans were too cozy with the Germans. And the British and the French didn't like it, and neither did the Russians. So the Russians were going to get like the Dardanelles, access to the Dardanelles, and part of that part of Turkey. And the French were going to get Syria, and the British were going to get the Palestine and Jordan. And they were going to be able to divide it up as they wished, and parts of Iraq. And then the war came, and it happened where the Ottomans were pretty much beat up.
Well, yeah, because they employed King Abdullah the First, which would be the grandfather of the present King Abdullah II, and they enlisted his aid with his army to break the Hijaz Railway and cut off the supply line, whereby the Ottoman Empire was defeated. And as a reward, well, they weren't going to give him anything. And of course, if you really want to see the dramatized story of all of this, it's Lawrence of Arabia. Because Lawrence was the officer that worked with them, led them actually, and led them to victory. So then they were going, when after this 28-day period was up, and they spring this on them, they moved Faisal to Iraq, where he became the Hashemite king. They took the brother, who they're going to give nothing to Abdullah, and that's when Lawrence of Arabia, or Lawrence, went back to Britain, and he fought for them because he says, you just can't do that. These people gave their blood and their fortune and everything else to us. And so they rewarded him by giving him this territory called Transjordan, which at the time was part of Syria. And that kind of brings us up to date. Later on, they made that a hereditary emirate. When King Hussein was just a very young man, he and his grandfather, Abdullah I, came out of the mosque on Temple Mount, and they were shot. They killed Abdullah, the grandfather, and King Hussein was wearing a medallion, and the bullet hit the medallion, which saved his life. And ever since then, he became known as a man of destiny. Okay.
So what is this? What are we trying to get to here?
Well, what we're trying to do is to establish who these people are and why that they're literally using the situation of them wanting a caliphate or an Arab state to win whatever it is their plan is for the Middle East.
Well, I think they have to examine themselves personally. I mean, that's my opinion, that they are part of the Northern Kingdom, descendants of the Northern Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using the Southern Kingdom's descendants as a means to establish a beachhead in the area. I don't know if that was planned to do that, but that's how it happened. That's what happened as a result of their involving themselves, right?
Yeah, but because America wasn't involved back then.
No, I'm talking about the British.
Yeah, the British.
And even the French, for that matter. I think when you see, all because the poor Jews suffered the Holocaust,
mm-hmm.
which one could argue could be also part of some sort of design. I'm not saying that they engineered the Holocaust as an excuse, but you know what I'm saying? If you're engaged in establishing or supporting someone, you know exactly what they're all about. I mean, even Wall Street supported Hitler in the beginning, so maybe it was a design of the times to establish something for Europe to expand upon, but it got out of hand. But then because of what they suffered, then they were able to use that as an excuse to present to the world the need to support the idea of a state for the Jewish people.
Because we had already begun, I should say, to make our investments in the infrastructure in the oil in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, because oil was now, we're talking about when this sort of began. We're talking about the turn of the 20th century.
Right, but we hadn't done that.
But there was the need for oil now.
Yeah. Well, we go in there in 1939 with Aramco and set up our deal, whatever that Aramco deal was at the time. I'm not really privileged to that.
Well, Arabian, the English started it, and then the Americans picked up the slack later. But we all of a sudden
that's how we got involved in it.
Yeah, but the need for oil now is important for the world economy.
Yeah.
Where before, let's say 1900, it maybe was, but it wasn't as important.
Well, we didn't have any cars yet.
Exactly. So yeah, right. So, but then again, after the dismissal of this PICO. And prior to that, you have a discussion, though. So, the discussion to me is the reason I'm suspicious about how that works on that level. Suddenly, there's this desire to establish a homeland for them. And like I was telling you the other night, one of my friends is German, and he always has a tendency to tell me things like. I'm not going to say what he tells me, but he said something not too long ago about how that the British at Waterloo and how they won was supported by, let's say, the Rothschild banks, and after that and they won all that, they became very, very powerful financially. The British, for example, so that then that plays into all of that as well, right? So was that? I asked you that question. Was that the time of the joining of the two sticks? And then that's when, ironically, they would begin to discuss Balfour. Oh, we should have a home, because the Europeans didn't like the Jews, really. From what my friend tells me, they didn't like dealing with them. They didn't like, the Germans didn't like them. The Poles didn't. Everybody didn't like them. But then I also told you how we had a guest speaker not too long ago come and to explain Esther to us. It was one of our local people, politicians, who happens to be Jewish, and she explained how throughout history in Europe, let's say, the Jews were marginalized at certain times, and because of that marginalizing, they got into areas like banking, because Christendom wouldn't do usury, for example. So when they got into money lending and banking, they provided usury. So that established them in that field. The same with medicine, because Christianity or Christendom didn't like to touch the body. We're talking about a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, during the plagues and stuff like that. But they weren't afraid to do that, and they got into medicine and study. So ironically, because of the marginalizing of the people, they got into these areas that later became important, right? So I find it all very interesting. So you have Europe not liking them as people, wanting to get rid of them or whatever, and then you have the British thinking about Balfour and establishing a state. And is that kind of ironic that they would be doing that, but
don't forget, during that time when all of that was developing, oil started to become more and more and more important.
And oil is becoming more and more important. So they have to have
and
a
the
presence there.
And the United States got involved with the Aramco over there.
After the British sort of washed their hands of it.
Well, yeah, because the British had their own problems in other areas, and after they
were fully extended.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They were fully
They were
extended.
in India, they were over here. I mean, the sun didn't set, so they were still dealing with that. And being that good relative, we picked up the slack. And then at that point, I would assume we are now rising too as a power.
Okay, so now this leads to We have to jump from there up to 1980, because in 1980, when before 1980, when Carter became president, they came up with a plan. Now, like we've talked about many times in the past, Brzezinski's the one who presented the plan, but I don't know whether it was his plan.
Yeah, I don't know if he was the author of it either.
He wasn't the author.
We'll give it to him because he's the one that
made the presentation
about supporting radical Islam. We did a show on it. One of our last shows, we did that book. I forget the title of it. It was about the Carter years.
Right.
And in that book, he sort of alluded to it briefly. And at that time, we were also beginning this new entanglement in the area that we were facing. I think it was post 9/11. I'm not sure. Was it? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was after 9/11.
I think it was too.
That's how long we go back and doing shows.
No, we've been doing this
for
really.
years and years.
We're just old hacks, basically.
Right. And so, but what I'm trying to get to is how these people arrive on today's stage.
And how they maintain their presence.
And what they're doing.
Yeah, what you always have to look out for and don't get caught up in. Because you never know what they're doing, but like the thing about Brzezinski and Carter supporting radical Islam, or at least Brzezinski suggesting that he support that, supporting radical Islam as an act of as a hegemonic effort against the Russians who were now into Afghanistan, if you remember that, right, folks? So they're saying, well, and Brzezinski was anti-Russian because of his Polish heritage, right? You could see that. He maybe never said it, but you could sense it, even today. So he's saying this is the way to combat the Russians, bleed them like they did to us in Vietnam, because remember in Vietnam, they were supplying North Vietnamese with arms, and so were the Chinese.
Through the Chinese, yeah, that was all part of that.
Yeah, they were hurting us. They were bleeding us too, and this is like retaliation against them doing. It was the excuse they gave. Mm-hmm. But this idea.
But we had no policy in Afghanistan.
No, but we're now supporting radical Islam to ensnare them in Afghanistan. Their actions in Afghanistan. We're beginning to throw the Shah under the bus, and we're now ushering in the Ayatollah Khomeini. Mm-hmm. Because I just don't believe that the Ayatollah could have left France the way he did without us knowing about it. And if we really wanted to stop him, we would have stopped him.
We invited him.
We paid for the airplane.
Yes, we paid for the airplane.
So you have that going on, and now you fast forward to where we are, and you think, well, wait a minute, because let's say the result of this Mujahideen effort the effort was the birth of Al Qaeda, mm-hmm. right? And they were who was the guy from Al Qaeda that everybody loves to tell, that we killed? Osama bin Laden. He was on the payroll.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's on the payroll, and we fund that, and here we are. Just like
they took advantage of it. Like, why wouldn't they? They had all those arms, they had all that ammunition and everything, and they were a trained fighting force.
But it keeps in line with that plan of supporting radical Islam.
Yeah.
A change in the paradigm, going from a Shah, Pahlavi, oligarchic, I guess, kind of way of doing something. Same with Saddam, right? Ba'athist.
Well, then we support Saddam to fight. Well, before we get to there, we have to understand what their ideal was. Their ideal was to never let them come together.
Create chaos, always to create this chaos.
Keep them fighting among themselves.
And helping us battle over there to fight the Russians, or
keep supplying them with all the arms and ammunition they need to keep that thing going.
Exactly.
That's why the Israelis like the status quo with the Palestinians. That's a very small obstacle that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And they're not letting them create a larger army that they're doing today.
Yeah, they don't want that. They're part of our. They work the way we do. Keep them off balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and always they're always attacking poor us. So we have to respond, right? So that's that's how it works. So we're looking at all that, and even ISIS. We know we have been training ISIS forces in Jordan and southern Iraq, or parts
before we even get there, let's start with the beginning of the latest move was to start this Arab Spring thing. And then, as history has been able to show us so far since the Arab Spring began a few years ago.
That's right. That was also encouraged by
our CIA.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, we are dumping our best friend in Egypt, Mubarak.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And the only thing that Mubarak had ever done that would cause him to be dumped was that he outlawed the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, the Brotherhood was going to be very instrumental in the creation of this new Middle East caliphate. And they wanted to create it for the Hashemites. That was their point. So, we start supplying Saddam Hussein with the wherewithal to go to war with Iran for us.
For a while.
8 years.
Yeah.
Millions of people dead. Saddam starts using poison gas on the Kurds. And it became, I don't know whether he became someone they couldn't handle anymore, or he was arguing about his position.
Maybe he believed his own press releases.
Whatever.
You know,
they had, it caused them to want to be rid of him.
He got a little too big. We got to get rid of him now. He's getting out of control. Just like, what's his name in Central America? The one that's in prison now.
Oh, in Panama, you mean?
Yeah. Remember, he started kind of like getting goofy.
Yeah.
Where he started saying, I don't need no stinking badges.
Yeah.
Right? And look what happened to him.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, now he's in jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now look at Gaddafi. Gaddafi was playing ball. He was kind of goofy, but he said, "Okay, I understand. I dig it. I know where you're coming from."
Yeah, but he wanted to start a central bank in Africa.
Well, that was another kind of confrontation, but he was certainly giving up his weapons.
Yeah, that he fell in line with that because he wanted to do the bank thing. And so when he starts making these overtures about starting the bank in Africa, the central bank based on gold, of which he had 144.
And supposedly Saddam was itching that way too with the sale of oil, not using the dollar. Forget the dollar. I want to take euros. I want to determine whatever currency I want
And all of a sudden, Saddam wasn't useful to us.
Exactly, no, because you can't mess with that reserve currency
And for some reason, Saddam gets the understanding that it's okay to go to Kuwait and take Kuwait.
They probably sucker punched him to do that.
They probably sent him an invitation to come and take Kuwait.
Yeah, we pumped him up to say, oh yeah, do that. That's a cool idea. Not realizing that he was being set up.
No.
But we don't know, but it makes sense if you project it out. You think, to know how unscrupulous these people work on our end, to say, oh, I see how they could do that. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if it's true. We don't know if it's true or not, but
no.
I wouldn't be surprised, would you?
Well, the thing is we have the history to look back at. So as we look back at it and we understand who the players are, and we still don't know exactly what they're doing, but for some reason, we wind up with the biggest military base in our history over there.
That we only use temporarily.
Yes. And now we've decided to leave there.
With our stuff there.
But we left our stuff, and now we have a new enemy. Well, first off, we uproot Saddam.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Gaddafi.
And Gaddafi. And
we basically not uprooted him, but we got rid of Mubarak.
Well, Mubarak didn't need to be uprooted because he wasn't part of the Arab 10 kings.
No, but he was
in the way.
He was in the way.
They threw him under the bus.
They threw him under the bus. It's like the Shah.
Yeah, like just exactly. And funny thing, but the Shah died of cancer, and Mubarak's dying of cancer.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just
saying those are the facts.
Those are the facts.
Yeah.
That we're only looking at facts.
And Saddam died at the end of a rope. So,
yeah,
all of a sudden, the Middle East, I don't think really is trusting what's going on.
I wouldn't. Would you?
No. So they formed their own plan because they got the king to come up with a plan that they approved for the settlement.
The West side. I mean, the West's approval.
Yes. Well, everybody did. They sent the king out with the pen. He went all over the world. He got everybody, including the Russians, to sign on. The Chinese signed on. Everybody signed on to the two-basket plan. Mm-hmm. Then they give it to the Saudis because the Saudis are literally the working head of Islam because they have Mecca. Okay, so they give it to them to present at the Arab League. And at the Arab League presentation of it, you still have the same three dissenters. You still had Saddam, Gaddafi, and Syria that didn't want to go along with that plan. Now, at the time, we only could surmise that the plan that they were going along with was the not making peace with Israel. But as it turns out, it had something else altogether. A different connotation.
Well, they had bigger fish to fry.
There was much bigger fish in the pan.
Oh, absolutely.
But we're looking at it from the perspective of Daniel, so they had to be against the peace. They're not against the peace. They were against the caliphate. Each of those three.
Well, it's taking their territory to create it.
Absolutely. And
I wouldn't want to be it either if I want to keep my farm. If I got a farm and it's named Syria, yeah. I don't want to give it up to create something new and fresh. Mm-hmm. Why would I want to do that?
Well,
and if I'm Saddam Hussein, what do I want to know? And you're telling me probably, I don't know, something about the Kurds. And in order to support that, Turkey's got, as we see in that Pentagon map, whether that map is true or not, it was in the book, the Pentagon's new map. But still, I mean, it makes sense. If we could beat up Turkey like we did before with World War I, if we're at that point where war is the means to this end to advance this any cause you have, I don't know how that works. I have a feeling that's, and I'm probably going down a rabbit hole right now, but I think it works that way. You know, even if you have a little war, there's always a horseman kind of process to it, right? Mm-hmm. Probably. I mean, that's how it seems to work out 9 times out of 10, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, the Turks, they don't want this deal either, but if it's, push comes to shove, they're going to have to probably support a Kurdish state. Or territory, right? Because they want their due too.
Mm-hmm. They want their territory,
and they've been there a long time. And then we have that Armenian thing, and the Turks. The Turks have been really nasty to these people, and so have the Iraqis or the Arabs. So you got all these people involved, and they all want what they want in order to participate. Mm-hmm. To make
now, what do you think Syria did that puts him on the hit list?
Well, he's not. Well, his religion thing is probably a problem.
That is the problem.
And I think we looked at it the other night. He's really more of a Turk.
Yeah, he's an Alawite, which are Turks.
So he's kind of in an Arab neighborhood, and he's got a lot of power because the Russians, oddly enough, support him too because
he has that deep water port.
Yeah, and also
and the oil pipeline
from Iraq.
Yeah.
But also probably back to Sykes-Picot. The Russians probably cut deals with Syria when that kind of fell apart too. And you could probably see that, right? When they were part of Sykes-Picot and they were going to get the Dardanelles, and everybody was kind of on board. They weren't as there was no Cold War then, right?
Right, and because of his connection with the religion that is more
with Iran.
With Iran than it is with the Arab portion.
He's kind of like a pivot, kind of like a thing there. He's like it's interesting how, because of his religion and because of his ethnicity, he's alone, but he's got a lot of support. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of power backing him. The Russians, the Turks, mm-hmm. Iran. So he's not gonna be as easy to take down as.
Well, the thing about it is they all have the same MO for taking them down. They're weapons of mass destruction being used against.
And now we come back to that because when Obama said there was not going to cross that red line, and the Russians said not so fast, and then he backed down. I was kind of personally glad because I didn't want to see that happen, because I don't want to see Damascus as prophesied a pile of rubble.
Well, I mean, it's going to happen, but when?
Will. But we don't know.
We don't know. So
who wants to he wants to hope that it does, right? But at the same time, I don't think we should be pushing our weight around like that all over.
So Iran's influence comes into it now, and where do they use, of course, but Syria to store all the stuff that they're doing, and of course Syria and Lebanon at one point are just like one country. All the banking for that part of the world was put into the Lebanese area.
Yeah, Beirut was a beautiful place at one time.
Very beautiful, yes.
And really, Lebanon for Syria, because Syria has no real assets to speak of, they needed to control Lebanon and the ocean, the sea. They had to have influence over Lebanon. Mm-hmm. They always did, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so Hezbollah and Hamas become offshoots supported by Iran, with all their weaponry and everything held by the Syrians. So I think Syria becomes a problem because of that. And now we come to the meeting of 2000 where these people get together and all is revealed as far as Daniel is concerned, because we're waiting 20 years to see this meeting. This meeting takes place, and everything we're looking for happens. There's 3 dissenters. We think it's to the peace because that's what they're there for. But the hidden agenda wasn't exposed at that time. And so,
unless you dig for it, like we just did briefly.
But a lot of time has gone by. So we're 12, 13 years down the road from there, and history has revealed a lot of things that make it easier to piece together. Okay? So the players now expand to this worldwide consortium, and yet we still have this little small group in the Middle East of these 10 kings, with the 11th king that's growing up among them, and the uprooting that's making room for him and his plan. And now at this meeting...
Or our plan that we give to him.
Well, it seems, though, that he brought the plan to us for approval, but he volunteered to come up with a plan.
Well, but he also... It's sort of a plan that was part before of the Sykes-Picot.
Oh, yeah, this is...
Because that was a nice plan. That man and his son, they had no problem with Israel coming back.
No, none whatsoever.
It just wasn't time for them, I guess, to create that plan. Why would you not go forward with that? Why would you kibosh it or put a stop to it and then... Because
oil hadn't become what it is today at that time.
But what would you be afraid of? Creating a stability in the area.
But it was never for stability. It was for division.
But we like stability.
But we divide. We divide in order to conquer. We don't put together and glue it together in order to stabilize it. We divide it to make it shaky.
Yeah, and then let it kind of become stable on its own, I guess.
But it doesn't, because our influence is always there with what we want.
Yeah.
You see?
And that always changes.
At the drop of a hat, whatever our needs are for today.
And then you have all the other influences. You have the Zionists who are wanting to advance the Zionist cause. You have the Islam wanting to, now that it's radicalized, they want to take over the world for Islam. And then you have the Christians, right? I mean, it's really a horrible mess.
It really is.
And it's not funny.
And it brings about the greatest war that the earth will have ever seen, and it takes God himself to come back to straighten it out.
Now you can see, let's say, kings of the East. You wonder why they come over that way. Maybe it's because culturally they have no real connection to that because they're not part of that, either Arab, Islamic, Christian, that monotheistic connection. And they're going, the hell with this noise. We're going to come over and we're going to take charge. I mean, I don't know what causes them to come over like that. Something happens where they get permission. They see it. They say, hey, we're going to take it now. Right.
Well, over these years, you see pipelines develop. More oil is discovered. More gas is discovered. New pipelines come into the picture.
There's pipelines all over the place now.
That's what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, this becomes a strategically very important place. And what is it? It's the place that was always strategically important through time. It was the Levant, the Silk Road, the way from Asia into Europe.
You got to travel that road to for trade. You got to make a buck. You got to make a living.
But here we are now. We're now into the final squabble, so to speak, over the Levant.
Well, the final organization of the Levant, I'd say.
That's an easier way to put it. I think
because they got to create. It's got to become part of the core.
Yeah.
When we learned in the Pentagon new map that it's part of the lesser included.
And we are not letting radical nations control that. We have to see to it that.
Well, they have to become. Well, we've created we encourage the radicalization, but now we got to either let that play out and then let them calm down and. No,
we're taking a shortcut. We found the little king.
Well, let him fix it.
Let him fix it.
Possibly. It's possible. I'm not saying I don't know.
He comes up with a plan to fix it.
Well, we'll see.
Well, but he does. He literally in history comes
somebody over there's got to come up with a plan to fix it.
But they did, and they're following it still. They've never changed from what he went out and got the signatures for in 2011. 2001, right after the attack on America, attack in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
He comes up with a plan. We send him out into the world to get people to agree to it. They present it to the Arab League through the Saudis. Everybody's going for it, but it never gets done. There's always something wrong. And then
the Israelis don't want it.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I begin to notice over the years that every time it falls apart, it's always the Israelis.
The Israelis always put a kibosh on it.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't blame them.
We're not here to judge.
No, we're not here to judge. But we can say I don't blame them. Just like I don't blame Assad for not wanting to do what they want him to do either.
Yeah.
I like Assad. He seems like a reasonable guy. Right?
No, because we've painted him absolutely black.
Well, but you look at him, you listen to what he says, he seems reasonable.
What made him get painted black? Didn't he use gas?
Well, they say he did.
Well,
but he says he didn't.
But what else?
If somebody says they didn't do it, I say, okay,
Gaddafi was asking himself, well, why would I blow up my own oil?
Well, exactly. Look what happened to him. He got a pole up his butt.
Yeah.
Really? Then he got killed. So, yeah. No, they're rough. These guys are rough.
I know. And so now we have a new enemy in ISIS. And where did they come from? They came from the conflict in Libya. We recruited those people.
And in Egypt and
wherever.
in Iraq.
They're recruiting them out of everywhere.
But they've been training them in Jordan, though.
I know.
There's a base there that they've been training them.
I know.
With our stuff.
I know.
So, come on.
They're totally familiar with the use of American
Exactly.
weapons.
They know how to use that thing on the shoulder. They know how to drive the tank. They know how to do all this stuff. And then, oddly enough, we left all the crap there.
I know.
Because supposedly we wanted to allow them to flourish democratically.
No, we're fulfilling the promise. But in order to...
No, I'm talking about Iraq. and the Maliki government. I'm only going by the excuse given that we wanted to allow them to fulfill their democratic rights.
Yeah, their destiny, democratic.
Exactly. And we left. And unfortunately, we didn't get that agreement about the full forces of armament, or whatever the hell they call it. I forget. But we didn't do that, and now it was a mistake, and oh darn it, oh gosh, and all of that, right? And yet we left, what, $2 trillion worth of stuff or less right there.
And we lost $1 trillion, so that was probably in cash.
And that was in cash that nobody knows where it went, because Rumsfeld said, you know what, there's $1 trillion.
There's $1 trillion.
$1 trillion unaccounted for, and I don't know where it went. Now, if I was running the show, he would be arrested until he found out where it was.
Yeah, where is it? Yeah.
You don't lose $1 trillion, in cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now all of this is coming to a head because obviously they need Assad out of the way because he was against the caliphate. So they've got a caliphate-style bunch of bandits now.
Well, his father was probably against it. It's been part of their culture. Of course he's going to be against it because it's not his people. He's Turkish, he's a Shia, and it's not going to work.
So he has to be uprooted.
Or stick it out and try and fight.
Well, the thing about it is, uprooting turns out to look like this. We pick the target, we blame gas attacks on them, we show the world that they're beheading people and these are not nice people, and for the sake of the goodness.
But he's not doing that. Assad
they presented evidence that he was using poison gas.
Yeah, but Assad isn't the beheaders people. That's ISIS.
Yeah, well, they went out and hired them.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just unsettling. It's just you want to wash your hands of it, but it's best not. Well, we are washing our hands of it, you and me, but we also have a job to do here to keep an eye out on what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's a job, but we've sort of taken it upon ourselves to do this.
Well, no, I mean, I started this ministry years and years ago in order to watch this prophecy to see whether or not it was ever really going to come to pass. And could you trust God? That was my motivation, and stick with him. And I found out absolutely you can trust him. The greatest faith-building experience of my life has been the last 34 years, where I have watched this prophecy coming to pass and have been able to literally almost piece it all together at this point.
Well, it has to make sense. And it has if you're in any way interested in current events, your faith in the Bible, all of it, you have an ability to reason. Is that the word I'm using? Looking for in your own mind. If you think it on your own, and you have that ability to think this just doesn't make sense when like we watched today. We watched someone we know who is prominent on television defend a position, and we could not listen to it without making comments, right?
Right.
But what I'm going to just go to one point here on Jeremiah 1:15. This is always I think this cuts to what interested me in following this thread. And Jeremiah 1:15 says, "For lo," King James Bible version, I'll do that because I'm familiar with it. "For lo, I will call all the families of the kingdoms of the north, saith the Lord. And they shall come, and they shall set every one his throne at the entering of the gates of Jerusalem, and against all the walls thereof round about, and against all the cities of Judah." That's a very profound statement. Mm-hmm. And to believe that, and to blame God, or to, I think you have to be very careful, and we were also talking about this logos that your son is this idea that he has about reaching people of philosophy and what have you. But that whole logos study and your new understanding of Christianity under that condition. Could you explain that briefly?
Yeah.
You're not going to take too long, are
right.
you?
No. Just what Tony has done is to come up with a philosophy that people who don't believe in God but are willing to discuss philosophy, can be brought the message that Jesus of Nazareth is the Redeemer, and that he has come and that he is returning. Because you don't ever have to bring it up as religion, because that's what these people are against. They're against religion, because religion doesn't make any sense to them. So by coming up with the philosophy of what God said he was, it starts to all gel and make sense, because I have seen him make this presentation about the philosophy to people who are New Age people that believe that God is dead. And it gives them pause to stop and reflect and maybe take a look at a different path. And then when you combine that understanding and you tell the story, which is the Logos of God, the Word of God tells a story.
Just like I explained
just
what
now.
I just said, that quote from Jeremiah, which you could trust. You can trust Jeremiah the prophet. You can trust the words there that he says this, that this is the Lord's action.
And so what it does is it puts a non-religious slant on the belief in God, because God didn't have a religion. He really didn't. He came here in only one way, in love. He came and he taught us love. He taught us that we are to forget everything else, because all the laws are now rolled into one law. Love your neighbor like you love yourself. Love God above all things, and do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Where he reverses, that's what I find very interesting. Confucius had already said that. And Jesus must have known about Confucius's writings. I mean, he was a studied man of his time. He understood everything.
Well, maybe that's why Paul was refrained from or prohibited from going east, because he wanted to go east.
Yeah.
He said, no, you got to go over this way.
That was Jonah.
Jonah
wanted to go in another direction too, and he told him no.
But Paul wanted to go, I think.
Paul wanted to go in another direction.
He wanted to go like to India or someplace, and they said, no, you're going to go over this way. Again, going to these people, right?
Yeah.
Reaching these people who were banished a long time ago. That's my point as far as watching those string pullers for our time.
Yeah. Because you didn't explain the one thing, though. You didn't explain who these people of the Northern Kingdom are.
Well, to our listeners?
Yeah, to anybody. You haven't explained.
Well, I'm assuming it's the northern tribes who were taken, the 10 kings taken, 10 not kings, but 10 tribes taken from the northern kingdom. That
were taken by Sennacherib in the time of Syria.
Exactly. No, I'm sorry, I didn't bring that. I just assumed everybody knew what I was talking about.
Well, that's not a very widely understood study, Ray. I mean, we spent a lot of years learning all of that.
Okay. Well, No, that was what turned me on to this. Like, oh, wait a minute.
Here's the Northern Kingdom doing this, and that's what brings into play who these people that the people we're watching are working for.
Exactly. And so when there's this sort of a apotheosis towards the state of Israel, and I'm not opposed to that, but so many people forget to put that into consideration, that, wait a minute, people are being set up here by their own people. So if the northern tribes are, first of all, creating an environment that then allows, through, let's say, Balfour. They discuss Balfour in the beginning. Then there's a need to provide these poor people with their own homeland in the form of creating the state of Israel, right? But yet the northern kingdoms people are the ones that created the environment that allows for this to happen, right?
Yes.
So are they really in support of those people? I don't know. They could be double-crossing them
Well, just
too.
a quick thumbnail about the northern kingdom. When these people leave the capture of Sennacherib, and they're in the Assyrian Empire, they disappear from history. These become the lost tribes.
Correct.
Okay, well, study has shown that these lost tribes wind up in England, Ireland, Scotland,
parts of northern
all
Europe.
over Europe, all over northern Europe. This is where they wind up, because these people, the Celts, as they were known in those days, or the Celts, they come into existence right about the same time in history that these people from the northern tribes are leaving. And of course, as Scott used to teach, these people become the church, because they're the ones who came, who had that specific definition. They were no longer
a people,
and God didn't. They were not God's people anymore.
That whole story of what's her name, Lo Ruhami, and whole story. That's just kind of confusing and really not. It's not that it's unimportant at this moment for our discussion, but if you want to research it,
well, just a short, just a short recap of that. So, yeah.
And in the place where I said you are not my people, it will be said you are the sons of the living God.
Yes.
Right? So it's a very profound and
it
very
really
interesting
and it's
story.
a great study. It only took 2 years to learn it. So.
Exactly. No, it's a very, we don't talk about it very often, but you can't in polite society.
Yeah, but now it's important.
People get goofy when you talk about it.
But now it's important, Ray, because these people, it becomes obvious that the people that are the focus of my watch, King Abdullah and the 10 kings that are giving him the power, the Middle East, Israel, and how they wind up getting screwed again.
Yeah.
And so these people, King Abdullah and his crowd, all those Arabs, they have handlers. They're working for somebody. They're working to get this coalition of these other kings who are going to, and they're the ones that make the deal, the covenant with many for 7 years.
Well, they've got to bring that whole area into the core.
Yes.
Of the world, the global core.
Right.
They label it.
And they need what they finally determined they need after many, many years is a moderate who will play ball with these upper echelon people and give them, the Arabs, and their caliphate a seat at the table.
Yeah, maybe that was the problem.
Using that as an overall...
Maybe that was the part of the problem before, that it wasn't quite ready to be at a table yet. Maybe there was no table to put them yet. But now, with Saddam, who was this goofy Ba'athist, dictator, he wasn't the right person.
Well, he wanted to be, so he had to be eliminated. In addition to that, he wanted to sell his oil for euros. And any time the fiat currency of the United States...
He was not going to play ball. He was not.
But any time the fiat currency...
Don't worry about stuff you don't understand.
...is threatened.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but any time the fiat currency is threatened, we go to war.
Yeah, because he's going, and they're going, we can't trust this guy. He's not going to work.
And so now we have Gaddafi. He's threatening the fiat currency by starting a gold bank in Africa, where we have kept everybody out of, won't even let them develop their own resources under any circumstances.
Yeah.
This guy's going to go in there with 144 metric tons of gold and start a central bank and bring those people out.
Well, just in his own, he was going to back his own currency.
Yeah.
And that, it made, when it wasn't going to fly, so what? No, it'd be a problem. he would be a thorn in the side.
They told him no. He said, "Oh yes,"
Yes.
And now he was on a stake and then he died.
Yeah, now he's pushing up daisies.
Right.
It's terrible. But
Okay.
that's how it is.
But now you see Assad. He doesn't have any of those characteristics, does he?
No, but he's
He's just involved with Iran.
He's just in a bad spot.
But he's put himself in that bad spot because he's got the wrong religion.
Well, but he's born into it.
But
he didn't put him. No, he picked up where Hafez left. Hafez dies as his father. He's picking up. He wants to really be an optometrist.
I know, but you see, that's a territory that belongs to the Arab state. When they went at the end of the First World War, where did they go to create the Arab state? It was to Syria, to Damascus.
Yeah, and because of that disruption, we'd have to research that, because that'd be an interesting study to see when did the Alawites, how did they gain a foothold? I mean, obviously they were descendant from the Ottoman part, right? Mm-hmm. And we're talking about an area when Palestine was, full of little lizards and stuff. I mean, as a backward, right?
Yeah.
When you went to Abercrombie, you got your pith helmet, you got your outfit, and you went on a tour. And you looked at the ruins of Giza and you went to Jerusalem and saw that, and that's what it was, right? It was quaint. And you have these Alawites in the area, right, in control of Damascus, the oldest fully operating city in the world.
And now that's going to be the caliphate headquarters for the Arab state.
They're not going to build a new city, but I don't think. They maybe, but I don't. Even if it doesn't, they got to get rid of this guy because
he's in the way.
He's in the way.
He does not have the right religion.
Or ethnicity.
That's why we're not over there leading the fight to hang this guy. We hire outside people, and we get them to pay for it. We get the Arabs and their kings, and who's financing all of this but Qatar, right?
And you think, why would you even allow Qatar to finance something so horrible?
Because it suits our interest.
No, and pretend that you're against all of this happening when you have your base in Qatar. You have your machine, your screens, and your buttons are all your push buttons that fire off all these rockets and stuff. These drones are based in Qatar. So how could the rich of Qatar be financing ISIL?
Because
not us telling them, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. And I'm going to tell
you why I think so. No, we don't want to do that. Because we want somebody else to do the dirty work.
I know, but at home we're shocked that that's happening.
No, we're not.
We are. People, they certainly
people,
sell it.
I'm talking about our government.
No, I'm talking about the people where how they sell it on Fox or on CNN. Oh, these horrible things are happening.
Right.
But nobody ever interviews anybody that says, well, this is how it comes down. There's always someone who's advocating for, we better go in there and do something.
The Hashemite king, that's part of the caliphate there.
But that's my point, though.
And this guy and this Alawite has the nerve to be against the caliphate. And so all of a sudden, what would you do? Would you start using poison gas immediately on everybody?
I don't know. I certainly would be, I wouldn't be, doing my bricks, but I certainly would be... say, wait a minute, this is my farm. This is my ranch.
Yeah.
This is my.
And that's exactly what he said.
Yeah, and they're going, no, it's not. Well, you're
no, but you made a big mistake, pal. You used gas on your own people.
But he said he didn't.
But that's okay. They have proof that somebody did, and they blamed it on him.
And yet, no one says, was it this? Somebody connected with this group.
Well, ISIS wasn't there yet.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Well, yes, it does because they were very busy over in Tripoli.
Well, you're going to rename something. There was somebody who was doing something there, so now we didn't label it yet. I'm not going to buy into that. You know that. You're laughing, but that's. That's how we operate, and it's not right.
Well, of course it's not right.
But that's how it is.
But we're sitting up here in the balcony, Ray, and we're observing the whole tapestry coming to light in full living color.
And we're trying to do a decent job with our own, asking the questions that we think people sometimes ask themselves.
And
right?
So now here we are. We're at a point in time where the Syrian operation isn't going exactly as we want it to go. So,
or it is, and it's not.
Well,
really.
It has to be dastardly, and we know the people that we hired are dastardly people. So yesterday, what did they do? They lined up 350 men, women, and children and shot them all down.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, we just cannot let that kind of stuff happen.
No.
Not America.
Well, no.
I mean, I heard Obama say it today.
Yeah.
So here we are now, supposedly attacking ISIS. Why? Well, because we've already picked out the caliph. We're going to give that to the Hashemite king.
When in reality, what you would think, if you were, let's say, a real planner and you were thinking about it and you were running things in the United States, you'd think, well, okay, why don't we back Assad to get rid of ISIS and then double cross him later?
No, because ISIS is what we needed.
No, but I'm telling you, but it doesn't matter if ISIS
because
is on our payroll.
They want to be a caliphate.
I know.
So we need them because the prophecy says that somebody gives this little horn king.
That's a whole different thing.
Kingdom.
We're just talking about in public opinion, how all this is working. You would think, which brings us to how we ask these questions and look at it differently than other people. You would think, now if you were running things without the prophecy, without any of that caliphate stuff, you'd think, okay, if we're that serious about getting rid of these terrorists, ISIL, we would back Assad to help him.
We'd go arm Assad and help him.
Right. Or if we don't like Assad that much, we would allow ISIS to form the caliphate and let it get to a point where we just nail it.
No, well, we say, we can't have that kind of a caliphate. That wouldn't suit the world.
Then we would go back and nail him and get rid of it.
And that's what we're doing right now.
You think we're forming or allowing
it's all part of the uprooting, because who do you have to uproot? You have to uproot all of those people who are against your way of doing things. So you got to identify them.
Well, you could have, let's say when we first went to Baghdad, remember when we got rid of all of the, what was his army called?
Oh, the Mahdi army.
No,
and that guy's still around.
Assad's not Assad. From in Iraq, remember the Revolutionary Guard? Remember when we went in there, we fired all of those generals and stuff, right? They would have worked for us. They don't care, right?
Yeah.
So that's the same point here, right? These guys, you don't have.
But they have to identify who the bad guys are that are going to come against them, and once they've got them all identified, they can kill them.
Yeah.
And so now, don't you find it strange that Turkey doesn't want to kill him, yet Turkey wants Assad dead? Why does Turkey want Assad dead?
Well, probably because Assad has been supporting trouble for Turkey, right?
I don't really know. Assad doesn't like the Kurds. He doesn't give them any space in their country. Mm-hmm. But Turkey doesn't like the Kurds. Well, Iraq doesn't like the Kurds.
Maybe the Turks already got a deal that, even though they don't like the deal they're getting, who knows? Maybe there's a blood feud that goes way back, that the Alawites are not really full-fledged Turks or something. Who knows? I don't know, and I have no idea.
Well, I don't either. That's why I thought maybe you had some inkling as to why would the Turks, who are not willing to go kill Assad,
No, they're at the border. They don't want. They're preventing any trouble.
That's a self-defense thing. They don't want anybody coming into their country.
They've made a stand. They got the tanks at the border, and they're going, "You're not coming across this line."
Right.
And then people are wondering, well, how come they don't go and help the Kurds? How come they don't cross the line? They're not going to cross the line right now. It's really great to see. It's almost like out of a Vista movie, where all these tanks are across that whole border. But I don't know why they don't. They don't like the Israelis. They don't like the.
Well, no, they've made friends with the Israelis.
It's on and off again.
But I know. But right now it's on.
Okay.
Because they're not going to get any place if it's not on.
Well, that's true.
All right. So right now it's on again with the Israelis, and they're against Assad. We're against Assad.
Maybe maybe because of the relationship with the Soviets or the Russians, that's what triggered that off.
Do you think it's the Soviets that are keeping Assad alive right now?
It was last year. It was because of their and oddly enough, now we have problems in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And we have sanctions against the Russians, and the ruble is tanking as we speak, because of the sanctions, right?
Huh.
And it's all because of Ukraine.
No. That's to bring Russia around.
No, but that was the excuse for the sanctions.
Yeah.
Yet we helped destabilize Ukraine by getting rid of that duly elected president of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. It took a couple of years. Even Joe Biden's son was involved through an NGO I read not too long ago in helping do that. Then we get upset. We put sanctions on Russia, and now their currency is not in trouble, but it's having a problem.
Well, we're fighting a financial war against Russia right now. Not a cold war, a financial war.
Exactly. And so maybe that's, and then the Turks, look, if going back to this original intent original premise or thesis that we brought up earlier in the beginning about Sykes-Picot. If Russia was part of Sykes-Picot, if you're Turkey, would you like Russia? Would you trust Russia?
No.
There you go. And Russia supports the Syria, right? So maybe that's why they don't like Assad, because the Assads always went to Russia for support, and the Turks are going, that son of a gun.
And in the meantime, ISIS is creating a lot of territory that they're in charge of and control of to form this new Arab state, because that's what they're claiming that's going on right now. There's a new state being formed.
And we put the screws on Russia with sanctions and banking and money transfers and all that, yet we don't put any banking or money transfer sanctions coming out of all of those places that help fund ISIS. Does that make any sense to you?
Not yet.
No, but
not yet. But I'm sure something is going to.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, if it was that important, wouldn't you stop any transactions from happening between Qatar and the? I don't even how do they get the money in ISIS? Well, how does ISIS get? Oh, it was reported.
We left all the vehicles full of weapons.
No, but there was reported
and we left all the vehicles full of gas.
No, but there was reported they went through a city in Iraq and robbed a bank, and there happened to be, I don't know, a couple $1 billion in cash laying around there, or something stupid like that, right? And then there's reports that, well, the Saudis, some of the rich Saudis helped fund them, and so do the rich Qataris.
Well, they're all part of that.
But how do they get the money to these people?
Ten-toed kingdom.
But how do they get the money to those people? Through the bank of ISIS?
Well, no, they put it in PayPal.
Oh, I see. Okay. No, it doesn't, really. So you think, well, where's that money coming? How do they get the money? Oh, in the Mosul, the Bank of Republic of Iraqi Republic, First Republic Bank of Iraq in Mosul. It's still open, right? And that's how they get the money there?
Must be.
I guess. Guess is as good as mine. I'll go with that. But yet, so you look at these things just don't make sense, right?
Well, that's when they make the most sense.
Exactly. And I'm just saying that with tongue in cheek.
Yeah, because we have been watching this for way too long. to not be able to make sense out of this. And when you brought up the upper echelon people, it became obvious to me that the people that I focus on are working for the people you focus on.
Yeah.
And the people that I'm watching obviously are smart enough to know that they're going to be double-crossed, because we double-cross everybody. We double-cross Saddam, we double-crossed Mubarak, we double-crossed Gaddafi, and we're not double-crossing Syria, because Syria, we never had a deal with them. So we're getting somebody else to knock them off for us, and in the meantime, we're sponsoring ISIS in order to capture the territory and turn the people into what the Hashemites really want, a caliphate, a political organization called a caliphate. Not you don't ride your white steed like who was that? Suleiman the Magnificent, carrying his scimitar and chopping everybody's heads off.
Not yet.
No, but I mean, they're forming a political organization.
Yeah.
That they're going to get from ISIS.
Something's going to blossom from that experience. Something will blossom from that support. Yeah.
And that's what we're watching. Now, how long do we have to watch and be witness to this?
I don't know.
Before the rest of the Lord's plan. I say it has to be at least until Assad is uprooted.
Well, once that happens, I would think you're going to see major change happen.
Major changes, yes.
Yeah, because then you got to have then moments of symmetry arrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great moments where, okay, now we all have to get together and have a big table and discuss this and that. Now we see peace is on the horizon. It's a big flame of peace, and it's coming.
Yeah.
Anyhow. Okay, we've done it before, whether it was Potsdam or what's the other one, right?
Yeah, Yalta.
Okay, we're going to carve up half the world, right? And the four get together, Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, right?
Yeah.
And they get over and they take the pictures and they sign the agreements and, right? It's going to happen, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Maybe not in that complete way, but it's going to happen. We'll have, just like the financial system, either we are in a cyclical, typical cyclical way environment, or the Keynesian system is so badly damaged that now structural reform has got to take place.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And America doesn't. I mean, the leaders of America don't seem to be so worried about ISIS, because they're forming coalitions to do them in, rather than boots on the ground to do them in.
Well, they think, but we're going to probably at some point have to, because they're never going to do it. They're never going to do it the way we want it.
If that's your army, Ray, and you want to stop it, what do? You cut off their ammunition and their weapons and their money.
Yeah, but you want them to do the job.
But you don't cut it off till after they do the job.
There you go. Yeah, it's terrible. And then all the people that die are the crossfire, the collateral damage. It's not something you should be proud of. I'm sorry. I can't be proud of something like that.
No, but I'm proud that we were able to sit here for 34 years now and watch this thing happen, and come down to where we are today and have answers as to why it's happening.
Well, we have an interest.
Yeah, we have an interest.
Something sparked us innately. That did me, did you. Back 30 years ago, I can remember it yesterday. I was reading a book, and there was a book that made a statement, and I thought, well, that's interesting. It doesn't make sense to me. And I went to the bookstore and I followed through, and I bought some books, and that's what happened to me. You got to have that interest. Why did I have the interest? I don't know. Why do you have the interest that you have? You don't know, do you?
Well, yeah, I do because I was very much into Gene Scott. I went to work for him.
But aside from that, I mean, what is it that motivates you to go on that way?
Because I started seeing milestones happen in history and I couldn't put it down.
But that's maybe why you are who you are.
Yeah,
that's part of your being who you're part of that creation. That's what God. I'm just saying that I had that interest, always did.
Yeah, me too, since I was a kid.
So what are you I don't know why that is. And the other people,
I'll tell you one thing. I'm very happy that I picked this up 34 years ago and started to run with it, because it's really been the most interesting experience of my life. It's been the most faith-building experience that I could have had.
It's exciting to see this.
And it is very exciting to know right where we are on biblical time, waiting for the next milestone to happen so we know how much closer we really are. And all of a sudden these milestones are brought to our attention about these next couple of years by Pastor Biltz not too long ago, 5-6 years ago, when I interviewed him, and we found out about these red moons and the eclipses and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know completely how all that
I don't either,
plays, but it'll be interesting to see how.
But that all of a sudden that comes into history. It's coming into play.
Exactly. So I don't know, but it's interesting to watch it unfold.
Well, and then we find Newberger, and Newberger gives us an explanation and tells us what Paul told us to do. And he doesn't know what Paul told us to do. He's got blinders on. He doesn't go out searching for the prophecy of Daniel. Remember when I went to talk to him the first time, they canceled out on me because they thought I was going to embarrass him. I was going to try and proselytize him or make him look bad. And I spoke with him on the phone personally and told him, no, that would never happen from me. What I want is his story about Birkat HaShema at the time. And I wanted to know his story. And as I questioned him and he brought this story to me, I had him on the show 5 times in order to bring out that entire story of what he was watching. Why are you telling the Jews that your redemption is at hand? Because Paul said, watch the Jews, because the story is about them. And he tells me they're waiting. The sign is the dead rising in Jerusalem. It's going to happen in the springtime. Absolutely confirming everything that I had learned over the years.
That's somebody to pay attention to, then. Somebody to talk to who shares that understanding that you've been watching.
Of course, because
now who else are you going to talk to? Somebody
not only that, but Paul, the apostle that I follow Jesus, but I follow Paul's teaching. He said, watch the Jews. Then you'll know what it's all about. And yet, we're still the only story in town. We're still the only people telling this story. Nobody else even knows it any. And I've been doing it for so many years on the radio, on the internet.
I don't know. I asked somebody the other day about something similar in how they determine something. Oh, and as when you read the Bible, doesn't it resonate with you? And they said, well, yeah, but we go to commentary first. I think, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, then, but what does it say to you? And this is not that everything has to be of a private interpretation. That's not what I'm saying. But when you read something, what does it say to you?
Right. Because God's word says something. It's the logos of God. It's the story that he's trying to make us aware of.
But we first go to the commentaries first. All right. That wouldn't be something I would do. First I read it. If it resonates with me, I don't have to go to the commentaries. Unless something propels me to go or suggests that I go.
Well, you know that these people who wrote these commentaries came from a religious viewpoint, not from a world viewpoint. And what God is describing here is what happens to the world because of their own free will, what they did to themselves.
And just like last night when we sat here and we were discussing something, we won't get because we're going to go overtime now, and we don't want to bore people too much to death. But remember, we started to look at things online, and we couldn't find it. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And we would type in a word or a phrase, a biblical discussion, and we could not. We would start to read, and Sal would say, "Yeah, that sounds good." And then second paragraph, the author always
left out the most important part.
Went off in a rabbit hole or something else that we had to go on to the next one.
Right. And everybody misses the same point. Nobody looks at the prophecy of Jonah as being the key. When Jesus himself said, "I'm going to give you your what do you call their generation? Disobedient and whatever he called their generation. I'll give you only one sign, and that's the sign of Jonah." And nobody's picked that up. There's only one sign of his return, and that's the sign of Jonah. And the Jews have that right down perfectly because...
But in putting that information in last night, everybody was open with a pretty good understanding. But then they would go off in some half-cocked or some silly thing, a historic fact that they would have to interject and put into the thing. And it just...
It took them off point, and they never wound up.
They never went back. They never went back, and it's just like watching the press conference today with the president.
Mm-hmm.
He will not shut up. He will not admit. He will not do. And right, and none of them do. It's amazing.
It really is.
Really amazing.
It really is. But anyway, folks, I don't want to bend your ear too long here. Ray and I are going to continue our discussions at least once a week.
We're going to try.
We're going to do it when we can do it.
But we're not going to do it if you guys don't participate in some way, either helping Sal or communicating. Because that last time, you never even got a letter saying that you enjoyed the programs. So,
well, we did from some people.
Some people we did, but
right.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for...
But the thing is, having people listen to you, the only thing you can ask for is they're listening to you so that pretty soon they start to see what you see.
And we want to hear from you.
Yeah, we do. We want to hear from you.
We want to hear
from you. We really do. And
we liked it. We couldn't stand it. I can't stand Raymond. I can't stand Sal. Whatever. Good or bad, warts and all, I want to hear some comments.
Mm-hmm. And so we'll be waiting to hear from you. And until we see you again, I want to remind you that if this is the storehouse where you get your meat, the Lord gave us a specific command. Give to the storehouse where you get your meat, so that meat's available all the time for those who come seeking it. And at this ministry, we don't charge you for anything. There's no charge. We just are a storehouse of God's Word. It's here. It's available 24/7. You can listen to these shows. They go back years. Well, we've been on the air for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
And
we should maybe develop a gold-crested connection room that costs like at least $100 to enter. What do you think?
I don't know. I have never, ever thought of selling God's Word. God said you give to the storehouse where you get your meat, and that's good enough for me.
How about a wooden crested door entry?
No, it's good enough for me because God said, who I call, I enable. He said he would provide, and he has. All these years he has provided for me.
Absolutely, me too.
And so the information is free, and it's given with that spirit that you understand that
sprinkled with a little bit of guilt.
Well,
like a cupcake, the sprinkles on top are the little guilt of storehouse where you get your meat.
Yeah.
That is a little bit of guilt, is it not?
Well, not just really. I'm just explaining it to them. I'm not saying they have to act on it.
You're
I'm
absolutely
saying that
right.
this is what God said.
No, but he needs to be paid. You gotta have donations to come in here, right?
Yeah, we do, because we can't survive without them.
Especially in that Mexican environment. Gee whiz.
Yeah, and so we've opened the new site, BroSal.org. Be sure and get over there and tell your friends. You can sign up there to start receiving my programs.
Yeah.
Because we got shut down. The Lord finally allowed someone to show their true colors, and they, and they decided in my own family to shut me down.
They were the Illuminatus.
Yeah, Illuminatus.
The Illuminatus. Yeah, those Illuminatus. Oh, brother.
Yeah. And so anyhow, if this is the storehouse where you get your meat, then stand up and cheer loudly, because
it's offering time.
It is offering time, and God loves a